Well, hi. It's like a party. I'm at the party and I just got myself a drink and a chopped liver cookie, and I go, hi. Like that kind of thing. Okay. I,
Yeah.
I'm a poet and an actor and a writer, a playwright. I've written screenplays and plays. I wrote a play called Circle of Will, which ran for several years in Hollywood and was revived a few years ago. I starred in it as William Shakespeare. It won Drama Critics Awards for Best Comedy, Best Performance by an Actor, and so forth. I'm also a publisher and editor. I published a literary magazine called On the Bus, which I published for 25 years. And 2 years ago, I handed it over to someone else to do the editing, and I'm up in the penthouse, you might say. It's called On the Bus, all one word. I'm also a teacher, and I have taught acting, improvisational theater as well. I was in Second City, so I've done improvisational theater too. But my books on writing are called Method Writing and Advanced Method Writing, and they're available on Amazon, or if you, on some street corners, there's a guy in a trench coat selling them as well, and you get a discount that way. And method writing is something I developed when I thought about teaching writing. How did I want to teach? And because I was an actor and
Mm.
understood method writing, I looked for a way to teach writing that would have a similar methodology of process to method acting. And because I did improvisational theater, they use what they call theater games. So I have not games, but I have concepts, techniques that are part of that idea of
Mhm.
you do the technique and it releases the subject or the story. And uh,
Yeah.
uh, and also I use sports as a kind of metaphor or an analogy for the concept of learning the techniques I'm teaching. I've been
Mm.
involved in sports when I was very young, and I was fascinated with how the body learned. So I thought, okay, how can I take method acting, create concepts in method writing, and use them in a way that you would if you were practicing your tennis stroke or your golf swing or a
Hmm.
foul shot or something. So that's basically
Yeah.
who I am. I have a 30-year-old son who's also a writer and a teacher. And I live with my wife in Los Angeles. I've been here for 50 years.
Thank you, Jack.
That's not in a nutshell, but in a gallon tank.
In a gallon tank. Well, the very first thing I noticed about you when I actually found you on YouTube with that interview there, and the very first thing I noticed about you was that there is this really large aspect of play in what you teach. And my uncle was instrumental in teaching me how to write when I was young, teaching me creative writing. And it was always through play. And I just remember one thing super clearly, even if to be looking for ideas, he would tell me to come up with a sentence and then go through a newspaper and cut out all the letters and stick down the sentence and rearrange the words and
Yeah.
see what else I can turn it into.
That's a game. That's
And
a writing game.
yeah,
Yeah.
and then poetry, a lot of poetry. And I have not actually met anybody else that teaches screenwriters the importance of understanding poetry. And I love it. It's so important for learning to become succinct and very visual in your writing. And I love that you have these aspects that you teach and the playful side of things. So if you would love to talk about that, that would be wonderful.
Well, first of all, screenwriting is very different from poetry and prose.
Yeah.
Even it's a little different from dramatic theater. Uh, so I think there is a difference, and I am teaching something below that, more important, I think, in a kind of process way. But I think the play thing you mentioned is really important. There's a Robert Frost poem where he says, "My object in living is to unite my avocation and my vocation as my two eyes make one in sight. And only where love and need are one and the work is play for
Mhm.
mortal stakes, where the work is play for mortal stakes, is the deed ever really done for heaven and the future sakes. So yeah, it's play, but you're not the kid playing in the sandbox, and when you get bored you quit, or when things aren't going well you just quit. It's when the work and the play is for mortal stakes, because you're writing for your great calling to be an artist. So sometimes it gets hard. Sometimes you have
Mhm.
to struggle, and the kid who's just playing, they say, well, hell with that. But the artist sometimes has to go through the hard, what Joseph Campbell would say, the inmost cave, where the real ordeal happens in the writing
Mhm.
process. So yeah, there's a lot of play in what I do, a lot of play in what I teach, but there's also the concept of the play is for mortal stakes.
Well, there's that. It's a necessary level of vulnerability that the brilliance comes out when we become raw with ourselves. So,
Oh,
that's my opinion.
no, no, that's
My
that is
experience.
that is why in method writing, the most important thing I teach, I have
Mhm.
different levels. I have level one, which is the beginning level. Then there's level two, level three, level four. My levels go on and on and on. It's kind of like the universe, which is still expanding. But level one is the most advanced level of all, because I'm teaching what I think is the most fundamental thing of all, and that is the voice and the way the voice is manipulated. Even in screenwriting, there is a voice. It's not direct, because obviously every character has a voice. When you're writing your dialogue, there's different voices. But when you read a screenplay or watch a movie or teleplay by, like David Milch in Deadwood, or John Wells, Animal Kingdom, and other shows, when you read it, even though different characters are talking, you sense the voice of the screenwriter, of the playwright, of the writer. It's hard to explain. Whereas in prose, the voice is direct. They're saying, "Call me Ishmael." This blah blah blah. When I get depressed and I want to knock people's hats off, I go to sea, and that's a voice. That's someone talking to you. Matter of fact, in prose and in poetry, for the most part, when you open a book of, a story or a novel, you can be on the beach. It could be a hot day. And yet, that writer's voice is speaking to you very intimately. They're not speaking to the crowd, they're not delivering a lecture. They're saying, look, something happened to me, and I don't tell other people. You're the only one I'm going to tell this to, dear reader. You're my intimate. And they start talking, and by the second page, you're not on the beach anymore. You're in a dank, dark cell wearing
Mhm.
an iron mask, in France, and it's cold. So the
Mhm.
voice of the writer transports you in a very intimate way. In a screenplay, it's a little different, but the screenwriters, a lot of people who are studying screenwriting probably have read a lot of the books I've read, that when I read them, they're all about structure. They're all about the 3-act or 4-act structure. They're all about mythic structures, which is the Joseph Campbell thing. And they're helpful. They're all helpful. But what I notice is that even there, uh, there's no the writer hasn't done what the mythic hero has to do, which is to deal with the dragon in the inmost cave. And the inmost cave is the inmost cave in your own spirit and soul. And to know how to come from that deep place, even when you're screenwriting, even when you're following the structure and the technique, there has to be that vulnerability. And a lot of people who are learning to write screenplays skip that because they read all those books on structure. which are fine,
Yeah.
but they never deal with writing. So when I started developing method writing, I thought, well, all those other things are good. I don't need to teach that. The teachers who are doing that, they're teaching really well. But what do I understand as an actor and as an athlete? As an athlete, where
Mhm.
does that depth come from? And it comes from the deep voice. So how do I teach the deep voice? What are the
Mhm.
techniques I can give the student to get to the deep voice? And that's why I developed method writing and the techniques I teach. They're all about tonal dynamics, the dynamics of how you connect with your deep, vulnerable voice. And there are other voices. There's what I call the head voice, which is analytical. There's what I call the reporting voice, which is just, you're telling the story, it's the narrative. But the voice can be manipulated and there can be different tonal variations. So once you learn to connect to your own deep voice, then you learn how to manipulate it in various ways. So I call that tonal dynamics. So when you study method writing, you're learning one, how to get deep, how to get vulnerable. I give techniques for that in the writing. But then as you get into my more advanced classes, we learn different techniques for changing the voice and varying the tone of the voice. And I call the whole thing is tonal dynamics. And that's what I teach. It's all about the voice. It's all about the depth. I don't teach structure. I don't teach that stuff. The very good stuff out there. Christopher Vogel's book on Joseph Campbell's The Hero of a Thousand Faces. I was talking to one of my former students who writes for television for Animal Kingdom and Nurse Jackie, and she mentioned Christopher Vogel's book, The Writer's Journey, Mythic Structures for Writers, based on the Joseph Campbell book. And we were talking about the 12 stages and the hero and the different character archetypes and narrative structures, and all that's important. And she uses that herself. But my class is about the voice and what I call the deep voice. So that's what
Mhm.
I'm doing. That's
I
what method.
love that. That's that's what I believe that we really connect to as an audience is we connect to the humanity that's inside of that project, not just not a series of events or a plot or anything like that. It's the humanity that's in there. This brings up a really good question that's like on the tip of my tongue that probably you're the best person to answer this too. Um, when writers finish a piece, their first piece, second piece, 10th piece, there can be this tremendous fear in giving it to people to read because their soul is on that page and they can be concerned with criticism. Now, for me, I've discovered that the deeper I get into putting my real voice out there, I do not care about the feedback at all. I just want to know, I'll ask them questions. I want to know if there's something that doesn't work or a hole in the plot. But apart from that, I don't care about I don't care if they love it or they hate it. Maybe they're meant to, but it's as authentic as I can get. So I don't have that fear of presenting my work anymore. But what are some ways that writers can do to get over that fear of presenting their work? This is the same thing for actors, right? One of my friends just did an audition, and he was so nervous, and I didn't expect him to be so nervous. How do we get rid of that?
Well, as an actor, I can answer your question. I can answer your question as a writer. Um, as an actor, uh, if I'm not nervous before a performance, then there's something wrong. I I want to be nervous. I want to be scared. I want to be fearful. I want to feel all of that going through me because that means I have something to lose. That means I'm on the precipice of taking a risk and discovering something unexpected. And it means I'm going to be coming from an authentic place. And one of my acting teachers always told us, he said, never deny a real emotion on stage or in front of the camera. So if your emotion is fear, if your emotion is nervousness, bring it into the character. The audience won't know that you're nervous. They will think the character has got something deep inside of them that's causing them an emotional pause. They
Mm.
won't go, "Oh, the actor's nervous." They don't know. So ask my
Great
wife
answer.
before I do a poetry reading, where you're just standing in front of an audience and reading your work. My palms get
Mm.
sweaty. I get nervous, and I can feel it. I can feel it building as we're driving to the venue. And my concern is I don't want to peak too soon. I want to be at the height of my nervousness. When they go in, here he is, Jack Rapes, and everybody's applauding. I want that nervousness to be so big that I could faint. But the last thing I want to do is get rid of it. And everybody wants to get rid of their fear. They want to get rid of their nervousness. We could go back. I mentioned the inmost cave of one of the 12 stages of Joseph Campbell's The Hero with a Thousand Faces. That
Mhm.
Christopher Vogler's book, that student I mentioned, her name is Danielle Nathanson, and she's a showrunner now for Animal Kingdom. She's a terrific playwright, actually, written plays, and she's written for a lot of television. She was part of a nomination for The Flight Attendant. She worked on that show as well. Um, she uses Vogler's book of those 12 stages. And one of the 12 stages that Campbell talks about is when the hero or the heroine has to slay the dragon, has to fight the obstacle to get the treasure or the rock or slay, whatever it is that the hero has to do. And that's the height of the arc of the three-act structure, when the hero finally goes into the inmost cave, not the outer cave, the inmost, because first you have to enter the outer cave, and you have ordeals, and you have struggles, and the hero learns about herself. She discovers who her allies are, who her enemies are, and then they have what they call the respite, or the pastoral interlude, where the hero integrates what the hero has gone through and gets ready to face the final battle with the dragon, or to get that stone that they have to get, or the jewel, or the treasure, or whatever it might be. And then you got to go into the cave, and you got to go in a cave, and you bring with you all the techniques, all your skills that your teacher, Yoda, or in Kung Fu, it was the wise teacher who called him Grasshopper and taught him all these things. You bring all your skills with you to defeat the dragon, and your fear is with you. The hero, that's what the hero understands. I can't get rid of my fear because it is my friend. I bring that fear with me. I bring that doubt. I bring my vulnerability. And that's when the big battle occurs. And that is the central point of the 12 stages of Campbell's work, of how the hero progresses through these 12 stages. It doesn't tell you how to write. It doesn't tell you how to write dialogue, but it's a good template for someone doing a screenplay to follow. And here's what's interesting about it. The template applies to the hero, your protagonist in the story you're writing, but it also applies to you as the writer and the artist. And if I go through the 12 templates with you right now and say, think of it as the character in your story, but follow me on a parallel track to your work as an artist. So the first thing we have, the first stage, is we see the hero in the ordinary world, because we have to see what the hero is doing, before the Star Wars adventure starts, or the Avengers, or whatever. They're in what's called the ordinary world. And that's you, the writer, too. You're in the ordinary world. You are living your life. You've got friends. You got a job, maybe. And then the second stage is the hero gets the calling. And we've heard people talk about that, people who become religious leaders. They said, I had a calling. Well, in Campbell's structure, the hero is going about his ordinary life, and then he gets the calling. So the hero has to do something to save his family, himself, the community at large, the world. He has to respond to the calling. Well, the artist gets the calling. I got the calling when I was a teenager, a young boy. I know some artists who don't get the calling until they're 40 years old or they're retired. But you get the calling and you want to be an artist. And your first instinct, which is the third stage, is called the refusal. No, 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 no. I can't do that. I can't. I mean, I like the ordinary world. I like my ordinary life. I'm happy. The hero, same thing. The hero, no, hesitates. No, no, no. Then what happens? A second calling comes. In other words, something else happens. It happens in the world of the superhero, but it happens in the artist's world too. He can't or she can't resist or hesitate anymore because something happens. In the characters or the archetypes, you have the hero, and one of the characters called the herald. The herald comes to provoke the hero that you got to do it. You're the only one. You're the only one that can write that book, that can write that screenplay, that can defeat that dragon. So then you find a mentor, the teacher. The teacher either comes to you or you find the mentor. And the mentor teaches you all these skills, and you go through the training with the mentor. And then finally the mentor says, okay, you're ready. And you have to go out. You have to go out. But to go out, you've got to take that first step. You've got to take that first step into writing the first page of your screenplay or the first chapter of your novel, or you cross the threshold. That's the fifth stage. And when you cross the threshold, that's when you meet what's called the threshold guard. That's another archetype character. Very frightening. And the hero, that's his first test. And it's not the dragon. You're not in the cave yet. This is just the threshold guardian. And as a writer, you're just beginning to do it. You're not sure you should show it to anyone. You're afraid you'll get feedback and it won't be good. You got to go through that period. And when the hero goes through that period, he discovers who his allies are. He discovers who his enemies are. And if you're the writer, your enemies might be the judges that live inside you, whether they were your parents or friends or some teacher. Oh, you can't do that. You're not. You just have to do. You're not allowed to be the hero, or no, you can't be an artist. You can't go do. You can't live in a garage. You got to be an insurance salesman. So you go through all these tests when you cross the threshold, but when the hero survives that and kind of gets through it, the hero realizes, okay, I can do this. I am an artist. I'm meant to write my play or paint my pictures or do my movie or whatever. And then comes the interlude. It's called, Campbell calls it the respite, where there's a rest period. In traditional 3-4 act structure, they call it the pastoral interlude, because we've reached a kind of height in the climbing action of the structure, but the real height's going to be much up here. But we've reached a kind of a height, and the action has been, moving and progressing. And now they have the pastoral interlude, where the hero has to integrate what she has learned up to that point. For instance, in the movie Downhill Racer with Robert Redford, the whole movie is he's at the Olympics and Gene Hackman is his coach, and blah, 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 and in a week he's going to be doing the big thing. And then he goes back to America because they're in Switzerland. He's a skier. He goes back to America, to the Appalachians, where he grew up, and he visits his ailing father, and he sees his old girlfriend who's still stuck in Appalachia. And it's a pastoral. It's country. Everything slows down, and he has to make peace with his father, with his old girlfriend, who he was then. And then when he goes back to Switzerland, he's ready to enter the inmost cave. He's ready to do battle with the dragon. And he goes in, there's the main ordeal, there's the death and rebirth. He has to, with the artist, you write that play, and then it might flop, or you might get rejected or something, but you got to go through it. You got to go through that because you're on your way as the artist. This is the stages you go through. And then you do get the reward. The hero gets the treasure. And the treasure could be an object, but it could also be spiritual insight, spiritual understanding. It could be wisdom. It doesn't have to be a thing or an object. And then the last three stages of the 12 stages is the hero has to return. He has to take the road back with the treasure, whether it's something within him or whether it's a treasure like, the stone or the sword in the stone, whatever. Proof that he slew the dragon. You go back, but the road back involves another death and rebirth where the hero or the artist has to come to terms with what she has chosen, the life she has chosen, and the ordeals that will be there. Because now that particular battle is over. She's going back to the ordinary life, but there will be another Herald. There'll be another adventure, another book, another screenplay. Maybe the first one didn't quite make it as you wanted to do. So do you quit or do you go on? And when you go back to the ordinary life, you are not who you were at the beginning of the movie or the beginning of your life. You have changed. And there has been a sort of resurrection and a final death and rebirth. And you are ready to face your life as the hero, the one who will do battle, or the artist who will do battle. And the key that I teach in method writing, if you followed me in all these 12 stages, the key to all the stories you write is the inmost cave. That is where the hero goes in and does battle with the dragon. And here is what Yoda and your mentor teaches you. I've given you all these skills. I've given you all these moves. I've given you all these techniques as a writer. Whatever, we're playing two different analogies here, right? We got the story you're writing and we got your journey as the artist. I've given you all these tools. But when you enter the inmost cave, the real battle is you must be ready to enter the cave without your sword, without your shield. You are naked. And what you have to defeat the dragon will not be one of these outer tools I gave you, is what the mentor's saying, but the inner tool of who you are. And whether it's the hero in the story you're writing, or whether it's you as the writer, if you've explored the inner cave of your deep self as an artist, then when it comes time to create a hero who does that, you will know what that's like, and you will be able to write it, because you have to enter the inmost cave. And Campbell doesn't say this, by the way. This is my thing.
Yeah.
You have to enter the inmost cave without the sword and without the shield. And that's what I teach in method writing, how the voice, the innermost voice that you have as a human being, that vulnerable place, if you do not go there, and this is not therapy, it's how to write in that voice in order to hook the reader. You're not doing it for your own, it's not therapy. You're doing it to hook the reader. That's the point, because then the reader goes, oh, that's me.
Yeah.
The reader identifies. And if we don't see that hero struggling in that deep, vulnerable place, then we don't care. It's just technique. It's all technique. And you don't want to be a writer. That's all technique. So while these structures are good, and I think you should know them. I think if you want to be a screenwriter or a novelist or whatever, learn all these techniques and these structures and things like that. They're good. They're good templates, but you got to replicate the most important one of the 12 stages, and that's the hero going into the inmost cave and doing battle with the dragon. And who is the dragon you have to do battle with as the artist? What is the cave, and who is the dragon you have to do battle with? That I'm asking you that question.
Yeah.
Who is
Yeah.
it?
Oh, it's always yourself.
It's yourself.
And it's your subconscious and all your limiting beliefs that you've developed your entire life. The
Everything.
crap your parents said or society said.
Right.
Oh, that guy drives a sports car because he's got an ego problem. Money doesn't grow on trees.
The materialism of the society you grew up
You're
in.
fighting that. Yeah.
You're fighting all of that. And
But
you
our voice is under that. So we gotta
Yes.
you gotta go through that.
You got to get into the deep voice.
And the resistance to getting under that and going through that is so challenging. It can be painful.
Well,
Especially if you're alone.
I teach them a certain thing called the transformation line, and they often will missay it. They'll say the transition line. I'll go, no, transformation line, which is a sentence. It's a kind of sentence. And they struggle. They do battle to have to learn it. And some of my students don't ever get it fully until they're in level 3. And then kind of as a backtrack, they begin to get it. It's not a trick. If it was a trick, boom, you do it. But getting into the deep self as a writer, not as a person, that's therapy. It takes an understanding how to manipulate words, how to manipulate a sentence or the dialogue that occurs between two people. And you understand that. Again, I was talking to Danielle Nathanson, and John Wells is the writer, the head of Animal Kingdom. Very often when they're writing, the writers in the room will have plot points in their, the plot points. And John Wells will say, yeah, but what's the story? And what he means by that, I use a different nomenclature than he does. In my nomenclature, it would be, yeah, but what's the character arc? Not what the character is doing in the events of the scene, but what is the story inside the character? What's the character doing? And that to me is where the deep voice is, and where when you're writing your plots and your story and your structure, you want to know what that is, but it's not enough to know what it is. You have to know how to do it. So method writing teaches certain technical skills that will help you do that. And yet there's one moment when you've got to go face the dragon without all those skills. So I always say there are 12 techniques in all of method writing, but really it's 21. And I said, would you like to know what the 21st technique is? And my students go, okay, what is the 21st one? I said, the 21st one is to let go of the first 20. When you face the dragon, let go of everything you've learned, forget all the techniques I taught you, and face the dragon of your screenplay or your book or your story, whatever, naked and unarmed, because what will defeat the dragon will be something inside of you. And if you trust that, see, that's the other thing. They don't trust it. They got all these fancy gadgets to defeat the dragon. Wait a minute. If I drop my special sword that's got a poison tip, that even if the sword doesn't hit him, the poison kills him anyway. I've got all these little tools, and you want me now, at the moment I face the dragon, I'm supposed to drop all my tool and just face him alone? Yeah, you have to trust you can do this. And that's again that deep voice, you see. So there's the structure, the mythic structure of Joseph Campbell that Christopher Vogel elucidates in his book, The Journey of the Writer, as opposed to the journey of the hero. But it's your journey as the writer to mimic the journey of the hero in your creative process and your creative life. And when I talk about the crossing the threshold and the tests that the hero goes through to find out who his enemies are, who his allies are, and there'll be one ally that stays with him throughout the whole story, his main ally. The hero finds that out too. But that's when you discover, all the judges, all the people that told you, the material society, everything you're supposed to do.
Mm-hmm.
And at some point, the artist is like the hero, isolated, and has to go on the adventure alone. But you do have allies in your fellow writers, your fellow poets, your fellow actors, if you're an actor.
Yeah.
And you actually, when you return to the ordinary world, you, everything will change for you, you know, whether you're the artist or the hero.
Yeah. I love this. And it's so easy for new writers to be focusing on the plot and the structure and trying to get all the technicalities right. But when we go through all those layers and when we get down to our innermost self, all of the technicalities just become natural. It's I just find that they're there. I don't have to sit there and analyze them. They just come out so much easier for me.
Well,
And then my
that's why the athlete practices
right.
over and over and over and over and over and over and over again, whether it's 100 foul shots or 100 swings with the same club, shooting for a specific distance. You practice it. Writers, I don't know if they get the concept of practice. I also tell my students, practice that concept. If it's how to write a specific moment in a scene that I call image moment, and it's very technical. I teach them how to do it. I said, write 100 of those, and here vary it because there's 7 elements, and it's very technical. And I say, do it with 6 elements, do it with 5 elements, rearrange the elements, change your bookends. It's a whole structure. But practice it again and again and again and again, and the more you practice it, then when the athlete is in the game, they're not thinking about the technique anymore because now they're just playing the game.
Mm-hmm.
And I learned that lesson in a different way when I was 12 years old. And I took lessons to do magic tricks when I was 11 and partly 12. And then I got interested in girls and I stopped doing that. But I used to go downtown to a guy who had a magic store, and he lived above the magic store. He was probably in his early 30s, but to me, he was an old man, the old guy in the magic store. And
I know, right?
every Saturday morning, I'd get on the streetcar, the bus, and then a streetcar. I'd go downtown, go up the stairs, and I'd get an hour lesson in magic tricks. And he never called them tricks, by the way. He called them illusions. But anyway, there was
Yeah.
one trick that involved prestidigitation. With presti means fast, digit is your finger. So prestidigitation is fast fingers, And some tricks have a little gimmick, which anybody can do. You press a button and the trapdoor falls. But this is, you've got to practice. And this trick meant I had a ball. Let me move so you can see it. I had a ball in my hand.
Uh-huh.
Wait, let me move again. I had a ball in my hand, just one ball, and I would show, look, nothing here, just one ball. And then I would go up in the air and bloop, I would come down and there'd be a ball here and a ball there. And then I would go up again and there'd be 3. And I keep showing you nothing here. And then I would go up and eventually I'd have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 balls. And then I would do it again. And then before, then there would be 3, then there would be 2, and then there would be just the 1 ball, nothing here. So you had to practice that over and over and over again. I mean, I can't tell you, as a kid, as John Lennon said, I had blisters on my fingers.
Can you do it now?
No, actually, my hand has got older, and I don't know where the balls are. So, which is a metaphor for when you get old, you don't know where your balls are. But anyway, so I had practiced it for a month, and I finally went up there, and it was one Saturday morning, and I did the trick. I did the trick really well, really well. I got it. And then he looked at me and he said, "Okay." He said, "You got it. You got the trick down." He said, "But you're doing the trick. Now do it again, but do the magic." And my brain went, whoa, magic. What he meant, it took me a little bit to understand it. He meant in your mind, you know the trick. You are doing the trick.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in your mind, you have to believe it. And you have to imagine that when you have that one ball there, and then you reach up and you come down with the second one, you have to believe that that ball is up there and that you go up and you get it. And then the third one, and then the fourth one. And you got to do the magic, he said, not the trick.
Mm-hmm.
And that's again comes down to that deep voice. You no more weapons. It's the human soul. It's your human heart that has to come in. You have to do the magic, not the trick.
So when you believe what you're writing is real, then the reader is going to believe it's real too.
It's more than the belief, it's the trust in the process that the creative, I call them the creative accidents. I call them the accidents of your genius, that you enter a place of magic when you've used all your weapons, and then there's an openness where you throw away the structure, you throw away your skills, and you're open, you're vulnerable. In the fear, you're
Mm-hmm.
open, and something happens, and you write something. It might be 5 lines of dialogue, it might be a paragraph or two, it might be a poem, something happens, and when you finish, you say what every writer or artist says when they do something amazing. The two things they say are what? One, how did I do that? Where did that come from? Where did that come from?
Oh, it's out here somewhere.
Where,
It's,
and the second question they ask is, how can I do it again? What's my formula? And the answer is,
yeah.
you've come to the place of no formula where you
Mm-hmm.
get rid of all your tricks and you have to do the magic. But people have a hard time with that because we don't want to fail. Nobody wants to fail. And unless you are willing, see, this is the other thing the hero has to deal with when he walks into the cave, the innermost cave, when he lets go of the weapon, he has to risk that he will die. He has to accept that. That's what the hero learns. I am accepting that I could die. And that's what the writer has to, at some point, not all the time, but at some point, I know nothing. I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know what, I'm not going to use the structure. Everything I know, forget it. I am empty. I'm going to wait for the thing to come to me. And 9 out of 10 times, the thing that comes to me will be crap. I will have failed. I will die nine times. And the 10th time, the accident of your genius. See, genius doesn't always come to your rescue. Talent always does, but talent will only make you good. And if that's your goal is to be good, well, be your guest. But at some point, the hero wants to slay the dragon. They don't want to just say, yeah, we had a couple of fights, but I never did slay it. And I'm back to the ordinary life. And well, it was okay. I did, everything was fine. No, the hero wants to save the world, save himself, save the community, save his family, whatever it is. So you've got to be willing to risk failure.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes the accidents of your genius, because everyone's got a genius in them, but we never let it out because we use our talent like the threshold guard, like the threshold guard. They're guarding the cave, and so your talent does, no, because if you go to the genius, then I'm out of a job. Talent wants the job, and you collude with your talent. You say, here's a $5, make me look good. And your talent says, keep me on the job, I'll make you look good. So your talent will always make you look good. Your genius will sometimes make you look like a fucking idiot. But sometimes you
Right.
get the accident of your genius and the magic happens. And when the magic happens, you say, where did that come from?
Mm-hmm.
And you say, how can I do it again? And there is no guaranteed formula for how you will do it again. You just have to enter the cave without your sword, without your shield. But you must have learned how to do all that first. You got to
Yeah.
go through all the trick. You got to go through it,
Yeah.
and then finally let it go.
I love these explanations because, you know, when you have that moment of genius and talent and you're sitting there and you're like, oh my God, where did that come from? It, to me, it feels like it really, like everything came from the atmosphere and came through me. And it's almost, it's like a compilation of every single thing that I've learned, just all coming and filtering through into this one thing. And so your analogy is just beautiful.
And that's why, Jodie, that's why you keep going back into the cave.
Oh, it feels good once you're there.
You want it.
Once you get through, you want it. You want it more.
Yeah, I mean, you're willing. Look, Jodie, you know what I'm smoking right now? I'm smoking the accidents of my genius. Because that is the greatest high there is. That moment. See, if it happened
Right?
every time, it wouldn't be special. It doesn't always happen, but when you get it, that's why the artist keeps going. That's why the
Yeah.
artist keeps going, because they want those moments. And sometimes you write a story, or you write a book, or you write a screenplay, and it's good, but it's not the greatest thing ever written. But you'll get the calling for the next one, and you'll go for it because you're shooting for that. You're shooting for that accident of your genius. But your
Yeah.
training has to be like the hero with the mentor. You have to train yourself like an athlete. You have to learn the
Mm-hmm.
techniques. Now, if you're learning outer structure, okay, that's all fine. Teachers teach it. I have nothing against that. I'm teaching the inner structure, what I call the
Yes.
invisible. I call it, it's method writing, the craft of the invisible form. It's the form that's not visible. The structure, that you can see, but you can't
Mm-hmm.
see the invisible one. And I teach that because it was my evolution as an artist and how I came to terms with that, both as an actor and as an athlete. And I played a lot of different sports, different kinds of sports, swimming, boxing. When I was learning to box, my teacher, he could have called me grasshopper. I was probably in my teens then. I used to go to a gym where a lot of professional boxers trained. And
Mm.
it was 3 months. I would go down there after school 2 or 3 times a week, boxing. It was 3 months before I was allowed to keep my hands up. My hands had to stay down by my side.
Oh.
In other words, he taught me footwork. He taught
Oh
me
yeah.
footwork. Everything is in the footwork. The strength of the punch and the accuracy of your punch comes from the footwork.
It does. It
So
comes
he
from your
was
feet.
building the fundamental in me. Then the next thing was I wasn't allowed to punch back. I could move and try not to get hit, but sometimes I get hit. And he was teaching me how to get hit. He was teaching me how to get hit.
Mm-hmm.
Now, by the time I was able to put on gloves and punch back, I wasn't afraid of getting hit. I knew how to move, how to stay away from the punch. And if I saw the punch is coming, I can in boxing they call it slipping a punch. You just a little move and the
Mm-hmm.
punch kind of grazes you or it hits you, but it's not with full force. So you learn you can take a punch. You learn you can go into the cave and the dragon can shoot fire at you and you'll survive rather than
Mm-hmm.
the fire's coming. Well, if when you're boxing your first instinct is to do this, how the hell can you punch anybody? What you got to
Exactly.
do is let the punch come to you. It might hit you a little, but even before the punch gets to you, you're already throwing the counter punch.
Yep.
You're throwing it even before you get hit, and you know you're going to get hit. So
Mm-hmm.
footwork, getting hits, and when I used to box, um, I would purposely let the other guy hit me first.
Mhm.
I wanted to see what he had.
See, I'm actually writing a boxing script. So what I did, I went and took boxing classes.
Aha. All right. Remember what I told you. Remember
Yeah.
what I told
Oh
you.
yeah. So there's it's important for a writer to do that. I think,
Absolutely.
go
And,
ahead, submerge yourself,
and the getting hit is failing. The getting hit is don't use your skills. Although, see, again, we're dealing with a paradox here because you've got all these skills that you've learned, and then you go into the cave naked. But you have to
Mhm.
trust. You have to trust the skills will come to your rescue. It's a paradox. It's a don't do don't do the trick, do the magic. That kind
Yeah.
of thing.
Yeah. I love that. Well, we should wrap up, I guess.
Yeah.
It's just, we could just spend forever talking about something we love. It
Yeah.
feels like 5 minutes has gone by.
Well, I'm glad.
Um, so do you have just a seed of advice, or is there like the most common question you get from your students that you're able to answer in a nutshell?
Am I good? That's the most common question. Am I good?
And how do you answer that with a student?
Well, it's easy to be good. Is that what you want? I mean,
Yeah.
is that what you're aiming for? Good. Uh,
Mm,
you know, uh, you should be willing to aim to be great,
yeah.
and the way you will become great is if you're willing to be bad, to write shit, to do the wrong thing, to go the wrong way. You got to take those risks. So yeah, you want to be good. It's easy to be good. My grocer's good. They're all good. Everybody's good. Everybody's out there good, and they're following the 12 mythic structure, and they're doing the 4-act, 3-act structure, and they've got the different archetypes, and they got all that stuff. And they want to be good. Don't be good. Be great.
I love that.
Well,
It's
how do I get to be
beautiful.
great? Well, risk being bad.
Yeah. And train.
Well, when I did comedy, I like I said, I was an actor. I was also a nightclub comedian. I did comedy.
Mm,
And I was in theater where I played comic parts. And my friend Alan Yosny and I, we were a comedy team. We played nightclubs and cafes, and we we did things where if there was many people in the audience as us on stage, we did a man-to-man defense instead of a zone defense. A zone defense is you take the left part of the audience, I'll take the right part. But if there's only two people, it's man to man. You make him laugh, I'll make him laugh. But we would always, when we did comedy, one of the things you learn to do is you have to fall on your face. You have to learn how to fall, how to do pratfalls, because I did a funny thing happen on the way to the forum, and I played Pseudolus, the main character that Zero Mostel did on Broadway, and because I'm a little heavy, I played him. I played that character of Pseudolus. God, Pseudolus is jumping and falling and tumbling, and he's a slapstick character along with other things. I had to learn how to fall, and not hurt myself. So even learning how to fall on your face, Jodie, even learning how to fail or
mhm.
write something bad is a skill you have to learn. So
Yeah.
don't go for good, go for great, and therefore you'll do things sometime. You'll risk being bad,
Love that.
and don't do the
Where,
trick, do the magic.
yeah, do the magic. Where can people find you at?
I'll be at the corner drugstore in about 10 minutes. I got to pick up some potato chips. I'll be right there, corner of 3rd Street and Orlando. My website is jackgrapes.com.
Mhm.
Jack, like Jack and the Beanstalk, grapes like the grapes of wrath. I would make phone. I had to call some producer about something, and the secretary answered. I said, "Yeah, it's Jack Grapes calling. Grapes like the grapes of wrath." She says, "Okay, just a minute." And I hear a thing, and she goes, "Mrs. So and So, Mr. Wrath is on the phone."
Yeah. Oh my God.
So jackrace.com. And if you go to Amazon, my two books are method writing. Well, I have several books of poetry, but I don't think your audience is necessarily going to be interested in my poetry. But my books will show up on Amazon. But my books on writing are called, there's method writing, the first four concepts. And then there's the advanced method writing. So either one of those books are good. And I also teach Zoom. I have people Zooming in all over the world, from Ukraine and Dublin and Portugal and Spain and Hawaii and South America and all over the United States. So if you want to take one of my classes, my website's got information on that, and you can Zoom in wherever you are.
Yeah, yeah. And you have a slightly different structure to your classes. Can you just describe that in just 1 minute? Because just the way you do them is
my
interesting.
classes are not lecture classes.
Yeah.
More like an acting class where, for instance, one of my acting classes, you were there for maybe 3-4 hours, and different people would get up and do a scene or a monologue, and then the class and the instructor would give them feedback. So my classes might run on Zoom for 3 hours or 4 hours or sometimes 5 hours, but you don't Zoom in for the whole 5 hours. You Zoom in for 2 or 3 hours. So it isn't like a lecture. You're not going to miss anything. So if the class goes from 7 in the morning LA time to noon, that's 5 hours. If you come at 7, you're done at 10 o'clock. If you come at 8, you're done at 11. If you come at 9, you're done at 12. And in the time you're there, you'll hear about a dozen people present their work that they were assigned on the concept. I have concepts, and you get feedback, and then I explain the concept for the following week. So if you're there for 2 to 3 hours, you'll hear 8, 10 other people work. The concept you're doing will be reiterated and explained over and over again. And then you leave, and you come once a week for 7 weeks. And that's how it works. So it's not like a college course where the teacher calls the roll at the beginning and then the bell rings and everybody leaves. It's more like a rolling thunder. It's a rolling thunder.
It sounds very supportive.
It's very supportive. We always have someone there to catch you when I punch you in the face and you fall down.
I love that.
Yeah, no, we're very supportive,
Yeah. Well, thank you, Jack.
Well, Jodie, thank you. I'm very honored that you asked me to do this. I appreciate it. And thank you. Thank you so much. I enjoyed the interview.